At 6 o'clock, we'll call the Preston City Council meeting to order. If everybody rise to the Pledge of Allegiance. One nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all. Okay, thank you. First item is to agenda. Is there any additions or corrections to the agenda? Any additions or corrections? Hearing none?
Yeah, I'd like to add one item.
Okay,
I'd like to discuss our street project a little more.
discuss our street project.
Yeah.
Isn't that kind of what we're doing? Okay, so Bob wants to add and discuss the street project further. Any other additions or corrections to the agenda? Okay, I need a motion by Dave to approve the agenda with the addition. I need a second. Second by Charles. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. The agenda is approved with the addition. Next item is the consent agenda, which is the minutes from our last meeting of June 1st. Approve the EDA COVID-19 emergency loan for Blossom Hill for $3,000. It is recommended by the EDA. The bills are submitted. Need a motion to approve the consent agenda. Made by Holly, second by Bob. Any discussion on the consent agenda? Any discussion? All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Consent agenda is approved. At this time, we will close the Preston City Council meeting and reopen a public hearing for our 2021 street and utility improvement project. Brett Grabaugh, our engineer, is here to give an explanation, discuss it, answer any questions.
Does everybody have a copy of the handout? Okay. Good evening. Many of you know me. My name is Brett Grabaugh. I'm the city engineer for the city of Preston. And tonight you are here for the public hearing for the 2021 street and utility improvements, the proposed 2021 street and utility improvements. Just a little history on how the city gets to the process of getting to a street or utility or a public improvement like this. Back in 2001, the city commissioned a stormwater utility report to look at stormwater systems within the town. Back in 2007, the city adopted an assessment policy so they had a fair and equitable way to pay for these improvements, which is a way of assessing the properties that are adjacent to the improvement. Back in 2012, the city knew that they needed some kind of structured plan on how to move forward and how to rate their streets and how to decide what needs to be done, when it needs to be done, have some type of a estimate on what it's going to cost and how they could structure those improvements moving forward. So in 2012, they did a pavement management plan in which we went through the town and we rated every pavement surface in town from a 0, which would be a gravel roadway, to a 10, which would be a brand new reconstructed roadway, already reconstructed, and give a rating system. And with that rating system, then there was a way to improve that roadway, whether maybe it was a 7 and it just needed a seal coat program. Maybe it was a 3 and it needed a complete reconstruct. But in 2012, we did a pavement management plan so that the city had some tool on how to move forward, improving its infrastructure. In 2019, last year, the city council decided that there were some roadways in town that they really wanted to address. And so we did a drainage and pavement improvement plan that we did a public bid on. We were a little late in the season and got some pricing that we didn't like. At that time, The council and staff decided best to instead roll those improvements, those proposed improvements, over into a larger project to try to get some more value out of those smaller projects, create a larger project to try to get some value out of it. That brings to the 2021. So the proposed improvement project that they were trying to do, we came a couple months ago and the city council commissioned a feasibility report. That report took 9 different areas of town, 9 different, not specifically just one roadway, 9 roadways, but 9 areas. For instance, some of you live in an area we call the Valley Street area. Some of you lived in the area called 5 Points. So some of them were larger communities or larger block areas. We looked at all 9 of those areas, the improvements that were necessary, the estimated project costs, and we put together a report. Now, a month ago, I came and I presented that feasibility report to the council. Out of those 9 areas, it was a larger financial project than what we were prepared to do at the time. And we knew that going into the feasibility report, but we wanted to kind of see out of these 9 areas that are on our wish list to do and something that we need to do at least sometime in the near future, if not now, how to structure this 2021 project. From that, the council narrowed that project down into 4 different areas. Those areas are Area 1, the Valley Street area, which would be everything south of 52, west of or east of St. Paul, and north of North Street. The 5 Points area, which is portions of St. Paul Street Northwest, Spring Street Northwest from St. Paul to Spring, North Street Northwest from St. Paul to St. Anthony, and then Preston Street from St. Paul to St. Anthony. Chatfield Avenue from Kansas all the way to the 5 Point intersection, which would be St. Paul Street, and Park Lane from Fillmore Street to approximately 620 feet up, just past the Fillmore County Developmental Achievement Center, where if you've driven that, there's a narrower portion of the roadway that's starting to deteriorate. So the council decided on those 4 areas and approved the feasibility report at that time. The next step in the process is to call for a public hearing, which they did that night. That public hearing is what we're here doing tonight, and you guys got everybody that lives within these project areas has property adjacent to the improved project. Got a letter inviting them to this meeting, and tonight we're having that public hearing. It's a time for us to discuss the improvements that are proposed, discuss the financial implications of those improvements, whether it be city costs or proposed assessments, and for you guys to ask questions, just understand what's being proposed within your neighborhoods and what the city is planning on moving forward with. At the end of the city has not ordered plans and specifications. They haven't moved forward with this project yet, but that's the next step after this meeting, if the city council feels comfortable, is to move forward and order plans and specifications. After they do that, the city council will then approve those plans and specifications when they're completed. They'll go out for public bid, then they'll ultimately be constructed. At the tail end of the construction, everybody that was invited to this will then be invited back to what we call an assessment hearing, which is just another public hearing where we have the actual numbers and we go through what the proposed assessments are. At that point, then the city council can approve the assessment roll, and ultimately that goes on your taxes. But tonight, I just wanted to go through the 4 areas of improvements, discuss a little bit about what's being proposed to be improved within those areas. We'll talk about the utilities that are proposed to go within those areas, the street improvements that are proposed, the costs, the city-borne costs, the proposed assessments, just a little bit of everything, an overview of the project, and then I'll open it up for questions about the project as a whole. Now, at the end of this meeting, if you have a question that's specific with your property, for instance, you have a driveway that's 12 feet wide, but you have a double stall garage and you just never widened your driveway and you want to discuss that, I'll make myself available outside afterwards to talk something specifically about your property. If you have questions about the project as a whole or the improvement as a whole, feel free to ask it here and we can discuss that and answer those questions for everyone to hear. So with that said, I'll go right over to this handout that you guys got mailed a week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago, and that is available here if anyone needs another copy. As discussed, the proposed improvement areas are broken up into 3 different specific areas: a Valley Street area, 5 Points area, Chatfield Avenue, and Park Lane. Again, Chatfield Avenue is very, very self-explanatory. Park Lane is approximately 620 feet south of Fillmore Street, from Fillmore Street. 5 Points is St. Paul Street from Spring Avenue to Fillmore Street, Spring Street from St. Paul to Spring Avenue, North Street from St. Paul to St. Anthony, and Preston Street from St. Paul to St. Anthony. And then the Valley Street area includes portions of Valley Street Northeast from St. Paul to Pleasant, Brownsville Street from St. Anthony to approximately 400 feet east of Pleasant Street, Spring Street Northeast from St. Anthony to Center Street, St. Anthony Street from Valley to Spring, and Pleasant Street from Valley to North. Now, if you don't know every street, the next page is a project map. The red is the Valley Street area, the light blue is the 5 Points area, yellow being Chatfield Avenue, and the dark blue is Park Lane. Just so if you're wondering where all these project areas encompass. Proposed utility improvements are a little bit different in every area. Some areas need new water main, some areas don't. Some areas need new sanitary sewer, and some areas don't. The Valley Street area has a lot of utility issues, sanitary sewer, a little bit of storm sewer, and some water main. Within the Valley Street area, we're proposing to replace the trunk water main, the trunk sanitary sewer, and all utility services. So that's individual service that goes from the main in the street to your property line within that whole area. One thing that we will be doing is televising all the sanitary sewers to make sure that, yes, it's something that has to be done, or if we don't plan on doing it, we'll still televise to make sure there's an improvement that needs to be done utility-wise, subsurface, before we reconstruct the roadway. Area 2, the 5 Points area, we're replacing the water main within that corridor. Those of you that live in that 5 Points area know that there's been water main breaks and patches and repairs, and now because of that, roadway patches and repairs on the surface. So we're proposing to replace the trunk water main throughout the corridor, the trunk sanitary sewer as necessary after we review the televising tapes, and there is no storm sewer utility that's necessary within the 5 Points. Area 3, Chatfield Avenue. There's just going to be limited surface adjustments to the structures. In Chatfield Avenue, there aren't that many sanitary sewer or water main utilities underneath the corridor. There are some drainage issues that we're going to take care of with some spot curb and gutter replacement. And there's an area right by Winona Street where it goes to the south that we are going to be putting in a concrete valley to get that drainage from the north side of the street to the south side of the street and down to storm sewer facilities that exist at the bottom of the hill on Winona Street. Again, the sanitary sewer within Chatfield Avenue will be televised to make sure that we don't have any improvements that we don't know about right now that we need to make. Park Lane, we're proposing to put some storm sewer in there as your Fillmore County Developmental Achievement Center. That side where the parking lot is much higher than the roadway, there's no concrete curb and gutter to convey that drainage. Whether it be rainwater or snow melt, it all sheets across the road, ponds, freezes, potholes start, all that kind of stuff. So we are proposing to put approximately 220 feet of concrete curb and gutter along that side, along that embankment. An area drain in between the two driveway entrances for their parking, and then a catch basin within that concrete curb and gutter area to take care of that drainage so we don't have sheeting water across the roadway to deteriorate that the way it's been doing right now. Proposed street improvements within Area 1, the Valley Street area, we propose to do a full urban roadway reconstruction. Urban meaning we're putting concrete curb and gutter back. We're not putting ditches in, that kind of stuff. A full urban roadway reconstruction with concrete curb and gutter throughout the corridor, sidewalk replacements only as necessary to accommodate the and design profile changes. So there's sidewalk within a lot of these areas, like the Valley Street area. We're not going to replace every sidewalk within those areas. We're only going to replace what we really need to replace, whether it's something we have to take out for a utility installation, or maybe there's 3 or 4 panels somewhere that are completely falling apart. Of course, we'll take care of that at that time. Because you guys don't live in the corridors, you maybe haven't paid that much attention to it, but back in 2014, we actually did this area of town, south of Fillmore and north of Fillmore. We did the same thing there. So if you drive through and you look at the sidewalks, you'll see what was replaced and what was left, but most of it is left in place. 5 points, again, a full urban roadway reconstruction with concrete curb and gutter throughout, sidewalk replacements only as necessary. Area 3, which is Chatfield Avenue, we're doing concrete curb and gutter spot replacements as necessary. That corridor is not changing that much, and so we're not going to redo all of the concrete curb and gutter, but that concrete curb and gutter that is deteriorating, that's falling apart, that's heaved, and we're going to replace those panels as we go through. Again, we're going to be working from Winona Street intersection up to Kansas, and replace some concrete curb and gutter simply for drainage issues to get that valley gutter that I discussed and the drainage across the road. Other than that, we'll be doing a full reconstruct, excluding the curb and gutter from that intersection up to Kansas. Park Lane, concrete curb and gutter as necessary. Again, I discussed about 220 feet, 230 feet of concrete curb and gutter on the DAC side, just to facilitate that drainage along with portions of the west side of the roadway. We'll subcut the street on both sides of the roadway, widen it, make it consistent length throughout, or width throughout, reclaim the aggregate in the middle, and build a new roadway surface on top. Those are the proposed utility and street improvements for the areas. Now we can get down to part 4, which is the estimated project costs. There's about 100 different ways we could look at these project costs, but the way I have it broken out here, just for you guys to look at here, I broke it down to roadway improvements, water main improvements, sanitary sewer improvements, storm sewer improvements, sanitary service improvements, and water service improvements. Those are the main 5 or 6 areas of improvements. You can see the estimated project cost through there. The roadway improvements obviously cost the most, followed up by the 2 major utilities, water main and sanitary sewer services, and storm sewer improvements are minimal in comparison. The estimated total project cost of the proposed 2021 improvement is just over 3.75 million. Of those, the estimated assessed cost back to the property owners is just over 955,000. So the city borne costs are just under 3 million. Most of those assessments, again, coming under the roadway improvements, being 881,000 of those assessments. The water main, trunk water main is not assessed, and that's paid for by the utility. The trunk sanitary sewer is not assessed. You can see here the storm sewer improvements are not assessed, and the water service replacements are not assessed. So the assessments that come back to the property owners are the sanitary sewer services and a portion of those street improvements. If you flip the page, we'll talk about the actual proposed assessments, how they're calculated. Assessment types, as I said, the street improvements are assessed back, and the sanitary sewer services are assessed back. The sanitary sewer service is assessed back at 80% of the cost, and so 20% of it is picked up by the city or the utility, with the remaining costs coming back to the property that's getting the actual sanitary sewer service from the main to the property line, and that services only your parcel, no one else. The estimated assessment for that is just over $2,100 per sewer service. The street reconstruction, the city assesses 40% of the street reconstruction costs. And so what we do is we take all of the street reconstruction costs, simply multiply that by 0.4. Those costs then are assessed back to the adjacent property owners. And the way they're assessed back to the adjacent property owners is we take every lineal foot along the improvement. And there's some criteria that I'll talk about in a second, but we take that lineal footage, convert it over to assessable lineal footage, and divide those two numbers. And you get $1 per foot. And so if you have 100 foot of frontage, or if you have 60 foot of frontage, you're paying different because you're paying per foot of frontage along your property. Now, with that said, the assessment policy calls for a few restrictions. If you have over 150 feet of frontage, let's say you have 175 feet of frontage, it's reduced down to 150 to make it fair and equitable. If you have access off of the street, let's say you just have a driveway access off of the street and your parcel is set back just a little bit, and you only have a 12-foot piece of property there, you're assessed for 60 feet. And so there's maximums and minimums to make sure that everybody's paying what we consider their fair share of the assessment. The next bullet points underneath the proposed assessment table, and when you take the assessable front footage, you divide it by the 40% of the estimated street project cost. You can see here you're looking at just over $89 per lineal foot, per accessible lineal foot. The proposed assessment rates, in accordance with the assessment policy, I'll just run through these quickly, but the assessment rate of 40% of the street reconstruction costs go back to the property owner, and that's based on a 32-foot wide maximum street width. And so if you're in, none of you are, but if you're in an industrial area and because of something that's happening down the street needs a 45-foot wide road, we'd only assess you for what would be the project cost for a 32-foot wide road. The maximum assessment of 80% of the sanitary sewer service reconstruction, like I said, the city picks up 20% of that. Maximum one-sided residential assessment of 100 lineal feet and minimum residential assessment of 60 lineal feet. Like I said, we max out the lineal foot you could be assessed and minimize the lineal foot you could be assessed. If you live in a corner lot and you have two frontages, your address is considered your frontage. The other side is considered your side frontage. You will pay 100% of your frontage with a minimum of 60 and a maximum of 150, and then you'll pay 20% of your side frontage. So if you lived in a corner lot that was 100 by 100, you'd pay 100 feet on your frontage and you'd pay 20 feet on your side for a total of 120 feet. As I discussed before, the city utility pays 100% of the trunk water main costs. The city pays for 100% of the trunk sewer costs, 100% of the storm sewer costs, 20% of the sanitary sewer service cost, and 100% of the water service cost. There's obviously more information in the assessment policy. I do have that policy with me tonight. So if you have, I know the policy, so you can ask those questions if they're related to everybody. Otherwise, if you do have a specific question about your parcel, we can discuss that later and I can show you the policy itself. The last statement on here is just to give people an idea of what they're looking at. So, a reasonable estimate of a total amount of the street and utility service project cost to be assessed to the benefiting property owners is approximately $955,000 for everybody. This estimate, if you take the project cost and you divide that 955,991.45 out of it, it's approximately 25.48% of the project cost. Like I said, the city's picking up 60% of street costs along with 100% of a lot of the utilities. Using the city's current assessment methodology, the assessment for a lot within the full reconstruction improvement with 100 feet of frontage, of accessible frontage, like I said, it's about $89, just over $89 per lineal foot. So for 100 feet of frontage, you're looking at $8,900. Parcels with an improvement receiving a sewer service, you're looking at another $2,100. And of course, these are all estimated project costs out of the feasibility report. We won't know the exact cost until it's publicly bid and awarded and constructed. But that's what the assessment hearing is for later this fall. Or later next fall, sorry. Just a blanket statement at the end here. Obviously, assessment policy is a policy. It's been in place since 2007. The city has went by it to the letter, but the city does reserve the right when actually levying the assessments at the assessment policy to to modify or depart from that methodology as they see fit. So if something were to happen and the city council decides to move away from that policy in any either direction, they do have the authority to do that. I went through kind of a lot fast, but I think you guys probably, after receiving this in the mail and reading through the letter that Joe put together, you guys probably have a better understanding of what's going on than typical. But I guess I'll open that up for any questions, either from the residents or from the council at this time about the project. Yeah.
I haven't been in Preston all that long, but can you tell me exactly what the sanitary services are that it's not explained in here? Can you tell me what that covers?
So running down the center of the street, running down within the street corridor, you have at least two utilities. You have a water main distribution main, and you have a sanitary sewer collection system.
Okay, so that's part of the sewer?
Yep, so it's part of the sewer. So when you run your shower, that water goes down, it hits your sewer service. In most cases, a 4-inch pipe that goes from your house out to the main in the road. When we replace that main in the road, that service also needs to be replaced. We replace it from the main in the road out to the right-of-way line. So not to your house, but to the right-of-way line, which if you have sidewalk, it's approximately a foot behind the sidewalk.
Okay.
And so we replace that service for every parcel that is getting a sanitary sewer main replacement in front of them.
Okay.
So right now, for instance, in these improvement areas, or majority of these improvement areas, your sanitary sewer is clay tile. They're 4-foot chunks of clay tile that were put in many years ago. We're replacing that all with newer sanitary sewer structures. So we're getting rid of the brick or block structures and putting in precast concrete structures, and we're putting in PVC sanitary sewer main. And then to your parcel where your service is, there's a Y connection in the main, and we'll run a 4-inch PVC sewer service all the way to your property, and then make that reconnection to whatever sewer service you have.
It said 35 services, so I wasn't sure exactly what that meant.
There's approximately 35 services that are proposed to be replaced with this improvement. And so it's on a per each basis. So it's about $2,100 per parcel if your parcel is getting new sanitary sewer service. And so I can tell you right now that we are proposing to replace almost all of the sanitary sewer services within the Valley Street area, and a couple within the 5 Points area. Chatfield Avenue and Park Lane don't have any of those proposed to be replaced, but we will be televising the sanitary sewer and making that determination before we design it. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. Are you familiar with Brownfield Street Northeast?
Yes.
Can you tell me if this improvement for the roads and everything is going to go all the way down to where the gravel begins?
Yes.
Okay.
As part of the feasibility report, there's more detailed drawings, obviously, of the proposed improvements. I have some copies of those drawings with me here tonight. And if you have questions, if you want to see what's actually proposed in front of your place afterwards, you're more than welcome to take one of those home. That'll show you a little bit better of the actual limits of the improvement. But yes, Brownsville Street is proposed to be reconstructed all the way down to where the gravel starts at this point.
Okay. And is this going to happen in 2021, or do you have a time period?
The last sheet of this improvement has a tentative project schedule on it. So the way these improvements go, obviously, we talked about the council and the staff realizing the need, ordering the feasibility report, now having the public hearing. The next step would be for them to order the improvements to be designed and publicly bid. We would publicly bid those out this winter. Then if they decided to accept one of those bids, that work would start, say, May of next year, be done in October of next year. So yeah, it's a 2021 construction season improvement. Yes, there is. So in 2001, we did a stormwater utility plan. Portions of that plan have already been implemented. The storm sewer that was done under 52 by your guys' place was part of that plan. Yep. Yeah, everything from the terracing in the fields above to the stormwater control pond that's on the north side of 52 to the swale that was graded out along your guys' property line with Mr. O'Reilly. And then back in 2007 or 8, when we reconstructed Center Street from North Street up one block, the city put in storm sewer. That was an urban section road or a rural section roadway with ditches and culverts. We put in storm sewer. This improvement proposes to extend that storm sewer north all the way up to your guys' place and ideally to the connection of the pipe going underneath Truck Highway 52. In order for those improvements to take place, obviously the council has to approve it and there needs to be some discussions about some utility easements, but the plan is to get the storm sewer extended all the way up to Brownsville.
That corridor looks great. I mean, that
Yeah.
looks perfectly, but then it has to work.
Well, once it gets to Brownsville, it has to go west of block, south of block, east of block to get into our system. And so the intention is to extend that system up, which would be just one more step in this phase construction of the 2001 stormwater improvements. Yeah. Ideally, do you know? There is storm sewer 1 block south of Brownsville. Yep. Ideally, we get a utility easement to go directly north from that. If you extended the Center Street corridor north through those private properties, ideally we get an easement to go through that, get catch basins within Brownsville, and then another easement along your guys' west property line to extend it up to where it's discharging underneath Trunk Highway 52 now.
I don't know how big normal storm sewers are, but this pipe is only about 2.5 feet in diameter, it's not huge. And so
Yeah.
it would be a fairly big project, it'd be a couple of blocks.
I think the storm sewer that goes underneath 52 is 18 inches, is it? Which it's either 18 or 24. But yeah, no, it's all been sized. It was all sized back in 2001 and resized again for different stormwater standards before it was put in 2007, the Center Street corridor, and obviously we would size it again to make sure that it functions as necessary.
In the spring, when all the snow melts and things melts and it freezes, the current runs across.
Yeah. Well, the preliminary design has us connecting to the culvert that goes under 52. And so anything that's coming from the north side of 52 would be trapped within that pipe and never get to your property south of 52. And then a catch basin where it spills over the curb right now, a catch basin right there, and a catch basin then also on the south side of Brownsville to capture that drainage that's coming from the east. Yeah.
Will that take care of the standing water on Brownsville? Because there's a lot of, right behind my house.
Yeah, when we do these reconstructions and we do large residential areas, we have the opportunity to change the profiles and make sure that we don't have flat curb and sunken curb and ponding water. And yeah, that's the intention. Yep. Any other questions about the project?
Is there any design change for the 5-point intersection?
We have discussed that. It is very difficult to actually do a design change there. We do have some options. There are a few things we could do. Obviously, we could change the traffic patterns too. If we so wished, we could add some one-ways.
It'd be nice if something was done on that road. I bet 50% of the traffic that comes on 52 on 117 turns up St. Paul Street, and it's the most dangerous intersection that we have in town. And I mean, the boulevards are hard to maintain there, including money, and it's dangerous just to mow it. You gotta constantly watch your back, the super busy traffic there, and the high speed traffic. So it'd be nice if you're gonna spend $1 million on this section, and you're gonna be doing 4 of the 5 streets that come into it. It'd be nice if something was changed somehow.
Right, and the other one,
Narrow or one way or something. It's been one way in the past. I know there's weight limits on it now, but I'm not enforced, so it'd be nice if something was changed.
Even if there was a stop sign there, I mean, the intersection I'm on, the
one stop sign. You guys are doing all the curves over that area of the roads, like having an assessment, having done by a police officer to sit there for 10 minutes and realize that there's no cars going by at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, but when you come by in the evening, now you have a dozen cars going the right way. Sometimes now you're looking at the stop sign. You know, you guys are gonna do all this work, that's some stop signs in some of these intersections that are known to be issues. My neighborhood's got over a dozen children in it. You got one stop sign at the intersection, and you got a whole trailer park, people who totally disregard one stop sign, and you have all these other people on 30 miles, 50-mile-an-hour speed limit. So if you're gonna do work there, why not have some stop signs, some one ways? You know, yeah, it's a pain in the butt for people, but you know, the potholes on the streets aren't slowing people down. So, you know, a stop sign in a couple places for the sake of my children and everybody else's children would be appreciated.
Right. And that's more of a enforcement and a philosophy change as far as traffic patterns. I'm not saying that your neighborhood isn't bad and something doesn't need to happen. A lot of residential areas in smaller communities like this simply don't have stop signs. They might have yield signs going one direction. You know, maybe every north-south street is yield and east-west aren't. But yeah, that would be a philosophy change that the city council could consider. It's not something that's going to be part of this improvement, but yeah, signage definitely could be considered by enforcement and city staff.
Yeah, we're 2 blocks from the post office, we get their traffic too, and there's 4 corners, and only one way has to stop, and everything else is open, so everybody's free for all through that corner.
Right.
I mean, I understand that's not what I'm just saying. During this time would be a good time to consider you guys maybe tearing over all the grass up in that area anyway. When would be another time to consider having a stop sign be assessed to it anyway, you know?
Do you have town meetings for that? Or would we bring up that concern?
This is a city council meeting, which this is. I mean, this is a public hearing within a city council meeting, but yeah, this is the time to ask to be put on the agenda and discuss public safety issues like that. Yep. The question, you know, these are both questions about stop signs and safety. Ryan brought up the question, I think specifically because we're reconstructing a 5-way intersection that is very difficult to maneuver, especially for people that either have done it their whole life so they don't really pay attention anymore, or people that don't know what's but yeah, he brings up a very difficult intersection. We have looked at it. We have discussed different options. As far as alignments go, there aren't many options, but we'll definitely discuss that moving forward, whether it be alignments or just different traffic patterns.
On that 5-way intersection there's a yield and a stop sign. And people coming down the upper one and said yield, they don't even slow down to pull through there.
Right. Yeah, I believe Chatfield is supposed to yield and then merge on to north when you're supposed to stop.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people
Right.
use it.
Right.
The hard part is if you have the right of way that's coming, you know, going up the hill from 52, right? And, you know, they don't even see anything. They don't see anybody until they get right into the intersection. You know, so you could be on the side road where that church is, and you could be yielding appropriately, and, or, you know, bicyclists or whatever. And, you know, those people going up that hill, they're going 30 miles an hour trying to get up that hill, don't even realize they're there until it's too late, so.
Any other questions about the proposed improvement?
How much is it going to add for taxes outside of the assessment?
That's a good question. Now, the city not only did the pavement management plan, but they've also been financially planning for this. That's not to say that this project won't have a negative effect on your taxes, but at least over the years and the coming years, they've been planning stepping that up so that it's not one huge hit at once. But maybe Joe wants to take that question.
Yes, you are correct, Brett, that you are correct that over a number of years, the city has been maintaining, putting aside funding to help fund these projects. And at this time, I believe we're looking at probably a 5 to 7% property tax increase in 2021 to help pay the debt service on these improvements. And so, Neil, you are correct that people who live in the project area will be paying assessments, and they will also be paying an increase on their property taxes. Of course, everyone in the community will, the same way that your property taxes increased when we did the 2014 project, and we didn't improve the street right in front of your house today.
Since on the paper one back, they're talking possibly 15% at one time.
Yes, and that's,
Is that gone or is it 7 to 8% second?
I think the 15% discussion was when we looked at the feasibility report that I brought in front of the council as a whole. And if we were to do the whole
The
thing,
whole $6 million project.
yeah.
and if we choose to, the total increase could be higher, could be maybe 10 to 15, but we've been able to stair step some of that in over time. So yes, I mean, we do have to have a significant increase in taxes. You won't necessarily see it all at once, though.
What is the breakdown as far as like paying that assessment off? Is it like over several years?
The way the city does it is we allow you to do a couple different things. At the end of the project, when we have the assessment hearing, we're going to come and tell you exactly what your assessment is. Actually, the letter that you get in the mail is going to tell you exactly what your assessment is. You can either, then we have the assessment hearing. Once the council adopts the assessment roll, we have about a month before we submit that to the county to be put on your taxes. And so you have a chance to prepay that if you'd like. If you don't want to prepay that, and if you want to roll that over your taxes, that would be distributed for the length of the bond that the city is going to go for, typically. So the city is likely going to bond for a 10-year bond for this improvement, meaning that your assessment would then be spread over 10 years on your taxes. And it's typically at 1% higher than what the city is borrowing that money for. And so if the city's bonding at 2.5%, that would go on your taxes over the next 10 years at 3.5%. And at any time, I think you can go into the county and pay that off then. So you could decide to roll it over on your taxes. We can do that 5 years down the road. You win the lottery, you can walk in and prepay it and pay it and be done and take it off your taxes. Or if you, a lot of times when a property is sold, as part of the sales agreement is that any special assessments are paid off. And so that happens at that point too. But yeah, the city allows you to put that then on your taxes over the length of the bond that they're going for at typically 1% above their borrowing cost.
Hypothetically, my property tax is $1,500 a year. With this assessment, based off the numbers you're giving us right now, I'd be looking at what, $2,600 a year after for 10 years? Is it in 11,000 to 1,100 a year or something like that?
Something like that, yeah.
So I'd be looking at
I'd have to look at I'd have to do a amortization on it, but yeah.
So in 10 years' time, it's about $100 a month, different thing.
Yeah.
That's not bad.
Any other questions from council staff or the public? Again, the next thing that's going to happen is the mayor is going to close the public hearing. At that point, there'll be a little bit more discussion that I'm going to stick around for, but then I will step outside if you have any questions specifically about your property, or if you want to see the feasibility report figures that were prepared that show a little bit more information than what you have here. Everybody wants their driveway changed. I can guarantee that right now.
We've never known.
This is the time to do that.
Yep.
Okay.
With that said, I'll turn it back over to the mayor.
Okay. That's it for questions, comments for Brett. So at this point, we will close Preston for the public hearing for the 2021 street and utility improvements.